Antarctica is the coldest, driest, and windiest place on Earth. It's also one of the most isolated places in the world. The Antarctic Ocean is a vast expanse of ice and water that surrounds this frozen continent. For centuries, it was thought to be impossible for humans to survive in such an extreme environment without modern technology. But what if I told you there was someone who did? In 1911, a young man named Sir Hubert Wilkins set out on an expedition to cross the icy waters of the Antarctic Ocean. He wanted to prove that it was possible for humans to survive in even the harshest environments. Wilkins set sail with his crew aboard the Endurance, a small ship built specifically for polar exploration. They were determined to make history by crossing the ocean within 2 years. However, their journey would soon turn into a nightmare. As they sailed deeper into the Antarctic Ocean, the weather took a sudden turn for the worse. Icebergs began appearing everywhere around them, making navigation extremely difficult. Despite these challenges, Wilkins refused to give up on his mission. With incredible determination and skill, he navigated through treacherous conditions until he finally reached land after months at sea. When they arrived back home safely, they had accomplished something remarkable. Not only had they crossed the Antarctic Ocean, but they had done so faster than anyone else ever could. This historic achievement would forever change how people viewed human endurance against nature's forces. After completing his first successful voyage across the Antarctic Ocean, Sir Hubert Wilkins returned again in 1914 with plans to complete another crossing. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, including bad weather and mechanical failures, his second attempt ended prematurely. Although he didn't succeed as planned, it still remains one of the greatest stories of survival against all odds. Today we remember Sir Hubert Wilkins not just as an explorer, but as a symbol of courage and resilience that inspires us all today. So next time you hear about explorers like him, remember that sometimes our greatest achievements come from facing fear head on instead of running away from it. In the icy wilderness of Antarctica, 19 brave souls set sail on a daring expedition. Little did they know, their journey would soon become one of history's most haunting tales. Trapped in ice for months with dwindling supplies, they faced unimaginable hardships. But their story doesn't end there. What happened to them after rescue? Dive into this gripping tale of survival and mystery on our channel now. Don't miss out on more incredible stories like this. Imagine being hired for a job so dangerous, so extreme that it could cost you your life. That's exactly what happened to the men who joined Ernest Shackleton on his 1914 expedition to cross Antarctica by land. Shackleton wasn't just looking for volunteers. He was searching for the toughest, most resilient men in the world. He placed ads across London, asking for people willing to face freezing temperatures, treacherous ice, and unimaginable hardships. The ad read, "Men wanted. Must be strong, brave, and determined. No experience necessary, but only those with nerves of steel need apply." Out of hundreds of applicants, only about 28 made the cut. These were the men who would become part of history, facing one of the greatest challenges ever attempted. Would you have been bold enough to take up this call? The crew was hired, and the year 1914 had just begun. But it would soon be over. As we all know, the world changed forever in August of that same year. But the expedition continued its journey to Antarctica, as if nothing happened. It took 2 years for the British government to approve and officially grant the expedition permission. They finally received approval from the Admiralty to build a new ship. For this mission, this is where things get interesting. Instead of building a brand new ship, they decided to buy an existing one. Why? Because they wanted something sturdy and reliable that could handle harsh conditions. So they bought a former whaling ship called Polaris, which was built in Norway. They then took it back to England, where they reinforced its hull to make sure it could withstand icebergs. But that wasn't all. They spent money on upgrades. Shackleton wanted to ensure his crew had insurance in case something went wrong. So he bought special lifeboats from America that were made out of oak wood. These boats would be used as rafts if needed. He also added some other essential equipment to the ship, like a hydroplane system, so that when sailing over rough seas or icy waters, the engines wouldn't stall. After months of preparation work, it was finally time for Shackleton and his team to set sail again on another expedition down south. Their journey started at Plymouth Harbor, and they sailed all the way around Cape Horn in Chile, before heading further south towards Argentina. From there, they crossed over into Georgia waters, near South Georgia Island, then continued eastward towards Antarctica. Along this route, they picked up more supplies and provisions for their upcoming voyage. Around 50 people joined him on board, including dogs and sledges. Yes, dogs. The dogs are pulling the sleds across the snow. And now it's time to get on board a ship. A ship that is going to take us to the North Pole. It all starts with an ice sheet floating in the ocean. As this ice sheet moves along, it picks up more and more pieces of ice from the sea and becomes thicker and thicker. This thick piece of ice can then be used as a platform for ships like ours. But how big does this ice have to be? Well, if we want our ship to sail over it, the ice has to be at least 5 kilometers wide. So there will be enough space for the ship to pass through. So what kind of ship do you need for such a journey? A ship needs to be strong enough to withstand the weight of the ice without breaking or sinking into the water below. It also needs to be able to move quickly across the frozen surface, because when you reach your destination, you don't know how long until winter sets in again. Many expeditions tried before, but none were successful. They either got stuck in the ice or they just gave up. Our ship was built especially for this expedition, with a length of almost 30 meters. We had already tested her out several times on shorter trips around Greenland, which showed she could handle anything we threw at her. In April 1909, we set off towards our goal. In 1914, the Endurance set sail on an expedition to explore Antarctica. But when they got trapped in ice, the crew was forced to survive in extreme conditions. This is the story of how the crew's routine work helped them stay mentally strong and resilient as they faced one challenge after another. The captain made sure that everyone had a role and responsibility, which gave them purpose and direction. They held regular discussions about their goals and challenges, which helped them feel connected as a team, and they followed strict rules for eating together and taking breaks, which provided structure and stability in times of uncertainty. By following these simple steps, they were able to maintain their mental health, even during the most difficult moments of their journey. So if you ever find yourself facing tough times, remember the lessons from the Endurance and take action to protect your own well-being. You can learn more about this incredible story of survival and resilience by watching our full video on the history of the Endurance expedition. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more inspiring stories of human endurance and triumph over adversity. The Endurance was trapped in the ice. They were stuck for months, and they tried everything to free their ship. But no matter what they did, it wouldn't budge. In October 1915, the crew of the Endurance saw something terrifying. Ice had formed around them so tightly that there was nowhere left to go. And then one day, they heard a crack from below deck. It sounded like thunder. When they woke up the next morning, it wasn't just that the ice was thickening, it was moving too fast. The entire ship began to tilt and twist as if it might snap apart. Then came another loud crack. This time, the ice ripped through the hull completely. Water poured into every cabin, and within minutes, the Endurance sank beneath the waves. With no way back home, Shackleton made an impossible decision. He would lead his men on foot. The story of the Endurance is a tragic one. After being crushed by sea ice, the ship was left upside down on the seabed at 90 degrees. As the crew waited for rescue to arrive, they were forced to endure a constant stream of freezing water entering their cabin. They had no choice but to stay inside and wait it out. But after weeks in this position, their supplies began to run low. On October 24th, Ernest Shackleton made the difficult decision to abandon his beloved ship and lead his men across the frozen landscape in search of help. It would be an incredibly dangerous journey, but with limited food and resources, it was the only option. And so they set off, leaving behind everything that they knew. This abandoned ship has been lost beneath the waves for over 100 years now. So how did we find her? Well, let's start from the beginning. In order to understand what happened to the Endurance, we need to know more about Shackleton himself. He wasn't just any explorer. Shackleton was a seasoned Antarctic veteran. His first expedition to the continent was back in 1901 when he joined Sir William Wharton's Discovery Expedition. During this mission, he learned valuable lessons about surviving in extreme conditions. He also became familiar with the area where he would later attempt his own crossing of the continent. By then, he already had experience leading expeditions. The expedition set out to cross the continent. But they would never make it. They were forced into a desperate fight for survival. In 1911, two teams of explorers left Antarctica to race across the frozen continent. But when their ships became trapped in ice, the men had no choice but to abandon them and trek towards the South Pole on foot. Both expeditions faced extreme conditions as they battled against blizzards and frostbite. And after months of grueling travel by sled or skis, they reached the pole within days of each other. After planting flags at the top of the world, both groups turned back north, only this time with much less food than before. By March 1912, Scott's team was stranded in their tent for more than 3 months straight, with only one meal per day. That single ration was a biscuit that could last up to 5 weeks. Eventually, hunger took over, and Scott ordered his men to eat the ponies. When that wasn't enough, he sent some members home early, while he and the rest continued southward. But then tragedy struck again. One man fell through an icy crevice, and another got lost during a storm. Soon there were just 4 people remaining, who decided not to wait any longer before heading toward Elephant Island. It seemed like the perfect place to stay warm, since temperatures rarely dropped below -20 degrees Celsius. However, after being spotted by rescuers, it turned out that all 4 men had succumbed to hypothermia due to exposure from the cold weather outside. This happened on April 9, 1912. So if you ever find yourself stuck somewhere remote, like Elephant Island, remember these brave souls who came here first. After 16 months of being stranded on Elephant Island, the men were ready to leave. They had enough food for a few more weeks, but they knew that the island was uninhabited and isolated. There would be no chance of finding any new supplies or help. The only way off the island was by sailing south. Ernest Shackleton decided he wanted to lead his crew on this journey and go through it himself. He gathered up all the men who could sail and set out from Elephant Island on April 24th. Shackleton sailed with 6 other men in one small lifeboat across the treacherous waters of the Drake Passage between Elephant Island and South Island. This is where the Atlantic Ocean meets the Pacific Ocean. It's known as one of the most dangerous bodies of water in the world. And even today, sailors avoid it if possible. Without GPS or compasses, they navigated using stars at night and the sun during the day. They also used an old sextant that measured angles between stars and the horizon. On May 1st, after 4 days of sailing, they finally reached George Island. Here they met some friendly locals who helped them get back into civilization. But their troubles weren't over yet. To reach safety, they still needed to cross South Island, which has steep cliffs and freezing temperatures. How did Ernest Shackleton make it? Find out next time when we explore how Shackleton made it across South Island. Ernest Shackleton was a polar explorer who set out to cross Antarctica by land. But after his ship got crushed by ice, he led his crew on an epic journey across one of the most dangerous oceans on Earth. They traveled over 800 miles south, from Elephant Island to South Georgia Island, in search of help. After 2 months stranded on Elephant Island, Shackleton took 5 men in a lifeboat across the treacherous waters of the southern tip of South America. On August 19, 1916, they reached Elephant Island, where they found a whaling station and were able to send word back home. The expedition had started with Shackleton leading a group of 28 men, but only 6 made it back alive. All of them credited their survival to Shackleton's leadership skills. When Shackleton returned to England on August 18, 1916, he received a hero's welcome. He immediately began planning another expedition to cross Antarctica. However, due to financial constraints, the project never came to fruition. Despite being hailed as a success story, there have been many failed attempts to traverse Antarctica's transpolar expedition route since Shackleton's historic journey. But what made Shackleton's expedition so successful? What lessons did he learn along the way that helped him lead his crew to safety? After more than 100 years, we finally have answers thanks to modern technology. In 2022, scientists used sonar imaging technology to locate Shackleton's shipwreck at depths of up to 3,000 meters below sea level. This allowed them to study the wreckage closely without disturbing it further. By analyzing data collected during this expedition, researchers were able to piece together clues about what really happened out there. And you won't believe some of these findings.